This experience happened to me between the ages of 8 and 10 years old, which was in 1990 to 1992, in Houston, Texas. My mother had lost her job, and as a result, we were forced to move from our 3-bedroom home into a very old, very small garage apartment behind a relative's house. From the moment I set foot in that house, I had the creepiest sensation that we weren't wanted. Seeing how distraught my mother had been over the loss of both her job and her house, the last thing I wanted to do was add to that by complaining about how the apartment made me feel. At first, nothing out of the ordinary happened. It was just the feeling. In my room, I was particularly creeped out by the tiny closet that faced my bed. I stayed away from my room as long as I possibly could, but as bedtime reared its ugly head, I had no choice. I had to sleep. I awoke one night to the sound of the closet doorknob rattling. It was just a slight rattle, but it was enough to cause me to sit straight up in my bed and turn my reading lamp on. Once the light illuminated my tiny bedroom, the rattling finally stopped. Terrified of who or what was attempting to open my closet door, I jacked a pogo stick under the doorknob. After testing how effective the pogo stick was as a doorstop by trying to open the closet door, and satisfied by the results, I returned to my bed for a restless sleep. Waking up the following morning, I was absolutely horrified to see the pogo stick laying on the floor and the closet door wide open. I was relieved to discover that it was my mother who had removed the pogo stick in an attempt to find some missing keys. My mom was puzzled by the sight of the pogo stick being propped against the door and asked me what it was all about. I confessed my fear of the closet and the apartment itself. Of course, she dismissed it as being my imagination. Yeah, right. If only. For the next few weeks, my closet never misbehaved. The doorknob hadn't rattled again, and though I was still creeped out by it, I hadn't propped my pogo stick against it. Then one night, I don't know quite what time, I awoke to the sound of a door slowly creaking open. There was a sudden gust of ice-cold air. I opened my eyes and saw an incredibly dark figure standing there. It was pitch black in the closet, yet the dark color of that figure stood out. As I watched the entity in my closet, I saw that it had 2 fire-red eyes. The eyes stared at me, and I could tell this was not a nice entity. Trembling with fear, I closed my eyes, covered my head with my blanket, and prayed for the figure to go away. I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I remember is waking up in the morning. This went on almost a nightly basis. I became so terrified that I slept with all the lights on, as well as the TV, so I could block out the terrible sound of the door creaking open. This took a great toll on me both emotionally and psychologically. I did my best to hide my anguish from everyone. After about a year of this torture, the entity grew much more terrifying. I would awake to see it maneuvering around my room. It would hover over my bed at night. It would tamper with the light and TV, causing both to turn on and off. When the lights would go out, the room would be illuminated by the red glow of its evil eyes. Throughout this whole ordeal, the entity never touched me. Then one night, I awoke to find myself gasping for air. The feeling of an ice-cold grip around my neck led to a physical struggle between it and me. Unable to scream or breathe, I prayed over and over in my head. After what felt like an eternity, it was finally all over. The struggle left me with red hand marks around my neck. This was the last straw. I ran to my mother and broke down in tears. I told her about all of the horrible things I was experiencing. After seeing the hand marks around my neck, she vowed to get to the bottom of things. The next night, Mom slept in my bed. Wide awake in her room, I heard my mother scream a few obscenities, followed by the slamming of the bedroom door. She barged into the room, grabbed me by the hand, and the both of us left immediately. We went straight to my grandmother's house. On the drive to my grandmother's, my mom broke down. She kept apologizing to me over and over again for my being subjected to this activity for so long. When she asked me why I kept quiet all this time, I explained to her that I was afraid it would have made our life worse. Needless to say, we never returned to that apartment again. Aside from retrieving our belongings, that is. My mother still feels guilty about what happened. I must admit, even at 29, and with a family and non-haunted house of my own, I'm still terrified of the dark. Thankfully, this was my last encounter with the paranormal. My first encounter in 2011 with a shadow person puts me on edge even thinking of it, but it isn't like I can forget. It started when I was 10 years old. I was, and still am, living with my single mother and my older sister, Alanya, in Godfrey, Illinois. I had recently become interested in the paranormal. I started doing research and watching television programs like Ghost Adventures and The Haunted. Oddly enough, I was intrigued by the topic of shadow people. Strange things happened to me. I would hear my name and go to my mother, and she would say she didn't call me. I would go to my sister, and she would say the same and angrily kick me out of her room. Nothing else could have said it. So I simply shrugged it off and started playing games or watching television. I would get back to whatever I was doing quietly before I was interrupted by clearly hearing my name. I started to feel like I was never alone. I would always say to myself, "It isn't real. You're paranoid. Go pray." Even though I knew it was real, I was lying to myself. I suddenly developed a fear of the dark. It was strange. Whenever it stormed and my mother told me to turn off the television in my room, I would cry and panic and ask to sleep with her. She would reluctantly let me sleep with her, and I got lucky she didn't say no, considering that by then I was 11 years old. For a strange reason, there were a couple of weeks when I couldn't sleep alone. I would call my cat with some treats and pull her in the bed with me. I felt a little safer with my cat. Then that ended, and I would flee from the basement. I felt as though I were intruding, and something malevolent did not want me down there. Part of my chores were to clean the cat's litter box and give her water every day. And to feed her, of course. But the problem was, my mother put her water and litter box in the basement because my cat tends to tip things over. So I never wanted to go down there unless my mother went down with me. There's a room in the basement where we have a television and a bar with stools. Mostly we never go down there, but I would go down there with my cat because it was an open place to play with her toys with her. I would sometimes see small, black, human-like figures disappear into the wall. I paid no mind, even though I could not stop thinking of it at the time. I tried to ignore it. In the corner of my eye, there it was again. My stomach had dropped, and I ran upstairs. I'd never looked back. My cat looked afraid of something. A couple of minutes after standing at the top of the stairs and listening to her pitiful yowls, I mustered up all the bravery I could and marched down the steps and got her. A couple of weeks after, nothing else really happened. I was almost sure it was gone, but I was wrong. The activity picked up more and more. Things would be knocked down. I got touched, usually poked on the back of my shoulder, or brushed on the leg. I would feel something sit on my bed. Assuming it was my cat, I would look up only to find nothing there. I began to stay up all night, playing with my phone or watching television. There was one morning. I can't quite recall the date, but I had stayed up again. It was a Sunday morning at 5 or 6 a.m. Then, my eyes drew to the wall behind the door. I saw something terrifying. It was a shadow slowly casting over the wall. I could make out a fedora and broad shoulders. It cast over the door, and then it was gone. A week after that, I was playing with my tablet at 3 in the morning and saw a purplish mist in my peripheral vision. It formed and disappeared as quickly as I had seen it. Things seemed to follow me. I was walking into the kitchen to the light switch. Something was close behind. I felt it. It was very close behind. I turned to confront it, but nothing was there. I still felt a presence, and what terrified me the most was that I just couldn't see it. Imagery in my mind. I randomly think of things sometimes too. One thing I always remember is the thought of a window being open to a beautiful blue cloudy sky. Then it sharply closes. I didn't just come up with that. I often get woken up. As of October 2012, I've seen and know more. I wake up often around 3 or 4 a.m., knowing I'm not alone. I felt like something hated me. My eyes went to the doorway and nothing was there. When I try to welcome sleep, I feel that if I turn around, I'll see the Shadow Man once again. I can't really talk about it to anyone, because my mother will just get angry if I tell her of my encounters. This actually happened to my mother in 2011. Let me just say that my mother is a very honest person and despises lying, so I trust her 100%. This took place in my family home, where my mother still resides. In earlier years, when I also lived there, I always felt there was an atmosphere about the place. Anyway, on with the story of what occurred one early morning with my mom. She's a bit of a night owl, and regularly stays awake until the early hours of the morning watching TV or reading. It was nearing 4 a.m., and she decided she ought to get some sleep. She turned off her television and her lamp, and then proceeded to get comfy, turning on her right side facing the wall, which her bed is up against. At this point, it was wintertime, so it was pitch black in her room. Suddenly, she felt as though someone was leaning against her back. She turned her head in shock to see a figure looming over her. She described it as totally black, even darker than the room itself, with a very rounded head and shoulders, no features and no arms to be seen. Terrified, she jerked herself backward in an effort to shove this thing off of her. She then felt the pressure leave her back, and when she braved herself to look behind her, the figure had gone. This really frightened my poor mother, and for the following few weeks, she slept with her bedside lamp on. I was really concerned for her, as I know how long it takes my mother to fall asleep, so I totally believe her when she swears she was not dreaming and she had only just laid down. I've heard on numerous occasions about smudging with sage to cleanse a house, so this is what I did, praying as I did so. My mother said that nothing has occurred since. Prior to this all happening, my mother said that she always felt like something was in the room watching her, but never said anything to anyone, as she worried we would think she was losing it. My nephew, her grandson, has also said he always felt something there when he visited my mom. This is a story of my very first paranormal encounter. You see, I've never been one to believe in ghost stories. I mean, I've always liked listening to them. Perhaps I was never really scared because nothing really ever happened to me. I'm 22 years old, and I live in Chicago, Illinois. On October 25th, 2008, my girlfriend's family was having a Halloween party. Before I knew it, it was already late, and I decided to spend the night. Her dad had always warned me that their house was haunted, mostly in the basement, but I didn't really believe him. Until that night. Around 2 in the morning, I kissed my girlfriend goodnight and went to sleep in the basement. Her dad gave me one last chance to sleep upstairs, but I told him no. Anywho, I pulled out the sofa bed downstairs, and I lay on the couch dozing off, as I was pretty tired from the party earlier. Soon, I began to hear small noises, like stuff being moved across the floor, but I just brushed it off, assuming it was her dad trying to scare me. It was pitch black in the basement. Shortly after, I began hearing what sounded like feet dragging across the floor, right next to the bed. I looked to see, and even though it was pitch black, I could clearly see a black shadow walk past the mirror that was hanging across from me. I pulled out my phone to use the light to see, but all I could see was blackness. I turned on all the lights and saw nothing. The door was still closed. So I grabbed my blankets and went upstairs and asked my girlfriend's dad if I could still sleep on the couch, which he allowed me to do. The next day, my girlfriend and her family just laughed it off and simply said, "I told you so." About a few weeks back, I was walking to my girlfriend's house. When I got across the street from her house, I saw the curtains in her living room open up, as if someone was looking out. I just figured it was her dad. I got there and began knocking, but no one answered. I figured he must have had the radio on loud. But then I turned and saw her dad across the street, walking home with his other kids from school. He told me at that point that there had been no one else in the house. What's up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a like or a comment if you so choose. If you have any stories that you'd like me to read, or any personal stories that you'd like to send in, you can go ahead and send me a message on any of my social media accounts, which will be in the description below. That includes my Facebook, Twitter, and Gmail. If you do decide to send a story, please feel free to include the name you'd like me to credit you with in the description of the video that it's featured in, as well as any taglines for what subjects the story might include. And as always, any submissions are greatly appreciated. If you have any constructive criticism, please feel free to leave it in the comments below, as I'm always looking for new ways to improve the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.